Welcome to our facility. My name is Molin Malicay. I'm the CEO here for the Sonoma County Indian Health Project. And I was asked by Terry to be a co-sponsor along with the NAMI, National Association on Mental Illness. And so we're all here asking the candidates to come. I'm glad you're all here. So we want to hear some good stuff from you folks. But we always start, since we're here at an Indian facility, we always start our gatherings with a prayer. So I've asked Dr. Branda Flyswithhawks to come up and do a little prayer for us. Brenda?
Yes, thank you. If you'd stand, please. Kishne Wahabe, Ikiana An, Inigde Guai de Stene, Ikishna Get Wate, Sonoma County Indian Health Project. Ibiki Wa, Ikene E, Idai Domahai, Mola Malicay. Nishde Newa, Ope, Ikmiah Waha, Ishte Nene, Kiakamwate, Ishte Santa Rosa, Magia de Wahite, Sonoma County. Ishpete, Ikwa, Ne, Kikiana Ha, Nawagate, Nishnemekwa, Apekia, Tenistwahahe. Creator, we thank you for this opportunity to come here tonight. We thank you for all these people, the older ones, and the little ones, and the ones in between, all that have come to the Sonoma County Indian Health Project with the opportunity to hear these individuals speak tonight. We thank you, Creator, for ears to hear and hearts to be open. We thank you for mutual respect, Creator, for the words that will be shared. We thank you, Creator, for we thank you, Creator, for Mola Malicay. We thank you for his leadership, for bringing these people here, so that we can hear what they have to say and how they think that they can help in this county and in Santa Rosa and in Sonoma County. We thank you for the opportunity to hear their words. We ask your blessings on them, on us, on our people, and on this project. Oh. Oh.
So we want to start by introducing some of our notables, some of our VIPs in the audience, and if I miss someone through my lousy eyesight and/or memory, please give me the high sign. I'm going to start with Stephen Gale, the head of the Democratic Club here in Sonoma County, who has been a beacon for the politicians that are in this audience now, and all politicians in Sonoma County. Stephen Gale. And we also have Salvador Cruz. Salvador is the owner of something you've been reading a lot about in the Press Democrat, and that's the fruit ice cream, soon to be chain, and produces a genuine ice cream out of Mexico, and he's inviting everyone here to come on down, and he'll take care of you. I don't know what that means. But, so, Stony Point Road, what's your address?
2770 Stony Point Road.
2770 Stony Point Road. It's the most fantastic ice cream you'll ever eat, and you can tell that I've been eating a lot of it. So, all right. We have a couple of tribal chairmen that are not here right now, but when they come in, we will stop and introduce them. Other notables in the audience. Piper is here. Piper has helped us immeasurably. She's a VIP. I'm not going to tell you which candidate she works for, but she's been really great in helping us put it all together. And all the other aides for the candidates up here, thank you for helping put this together. This is a momentous time. This is the first time that the Native American community in Northern California, the Redwood Empire anyway, has been involved in the political process outside of casinos writing checks to candidates and to movements. This is a momentous time, and we hope to see this grow and get more and more involvement from the Native American community and the mental illness community, which you're going to hear about in a little while. All props have to go to the guy here on my left who put this together. I came to him and said, let's do this, but he's the guy that did it, and he's the guy that's hosting us. So let's all give Molin Malicay a big hand. Right? All right, since the notables aren't here yet, I mean, you're all notables, but the ones that I know. So, and we want to thank you all for being here, because this is, like I said, something that you're going to see more and more often. And we're glad to say that this facility has been a fantastic beacon in the light of not only the Native American community, but the whole health industry in Sonoma County and in the Redwood Empire. So without further ado, we want to get into the introduction of the candidates. And Molin will start on my left. And I am going to bow out here in a moment. My name is all over this thing, but I have a bad back. I'm one of those nuts that used to jump out of perfectly good airplanes, and I wound up in my 60s with a lousy back. So a great candidate for the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, Mark Bamford, is going to take my place. So he will come up and do an introduction of candidates and the rest of the program along with Molin. So once again, thanks for being here.
So we'll have all the candidates come up here to the front. Then there's a little timer here that gives you 2 minutes to speak, so you'll be able to talk about yourself. Because what we want to do is find out who you are, and I know that's not a whole lot of 2 minutes, but I know you guys are all good speakers, and brevity is what we always talk about. So we want to know who you are. So if you can tell us just a little bit in 2 minutes who you are, and maybe what you stand for. But we'll also have a closing that you can also have another chance at that. But we'll also have questions, and you have all seen me the 4 questions that we're going to ask, and so we'll ask each of you of those 4 questions, and again, you'll have 2 minutes to talk about that when you're able to do that. So I would like to introduce, and I will start, I'm left-handed, so I would start on my left. And so Mr. Solomon will be the first to come up and give us a little 2 minutes. So if you want to come on up. And I'll stand here.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be with you here this evening. Thanks to all of our hosts and who've made this possible. My name is Norman Solomon. I'm an independent progressive Democrat running for Congress. And I've been an activist, a writer, an author, an organizer, a policy researcher for about 40 plus years now. And as we think about history and how it's affected us, I'd like to point out that we're encouraged to believe that history is in the past only. But we know that the situation that faces us, including what faces Native American people, has everything to do with history. Let me give you a little example. I was the director of the National Citizens Hearings for Radiation Victims in 1980 in Washington, D.C. And there we worked, among other things, to bring to the fore the reality that Navajo people from the Four Corners area were being sent into uranium mines year after year and decade after decade, suffering lung cancer, suffering from illnesses that were inflicted by the federal government and that the federal government was not acknowledging, let alone providing adequate health care. That, I think, is a symbol of what we face, where we have to fight for people's health care. And I can't possibly summarize in a couple of minutes my background, but I've been working on social justice issues now for several decades. I'd encourage you to go to our site at www.solomonforcongress.com. And in the course of the discussion, I want to address ways in which we today need to be willing and able to fight for human rights, which includes health care for everyone. And just for one example, I'm very concerned about what's happening with Medi-Cal. I'm very concerned about the way in which the federal government has yet to commit long-term to the kind of Medicaid funding that would affect people in the Native American community and around the country. This is not about simply deferring to the people in charge. We have to fight for our human rights and make a future for the next generations that they deserve. Thank you very much.
Okay, Tiffany Renee is the next person.
All right. Thank you so much for having us tonight, and thank you to Terry and to Molin as well. I am Petaluma Vice Mayor and Tiffany Renee. I have been serving Sonoma County issues for over the last 20+ years. I started getting involved in politics when I went to the junior college, did voter registration drives, and helped to get Lynn Woolsey elected to Congress. Since that time, I've been working to support women to become elected to office and to receive appointments to important positions, commissions, and committees as well. I have been very dedicated to issues around women's rights and domestic violence, as well as serving on the board of, the Commission on the Status of Women here at the county, and then moved into local politics in Petaluma, where I served on a number of committees to ensure issues around land use and environmental causes. Helped to shepherd in a general plan for our city, focusing on transit-oriented development. Since that time, when I was elected, I've been very concerned about transportation issues in the county and ensuring that we have infrastructure needs met, bringing money to support our infrastructure in Petaluma around interchanges, the 101 widening project, and the Petaluma River Bridge. I am the first Latina elected to Petaluma City Council, and I'm running a very historic campaign to be the 9th Latina elected to U.S. Congress in our nation's history. I have provided some information here for you today and look forward to speaking with you more after the event, and you can visit my website, tiffanyreneeforcongress.com. Thank you.
You shouldn't have mentioned 101. Next we have Jared Huffman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to be with you. I am Jared Huffman, and I have spent my professional career fighting for the public interest and getting things done. Starting out as a young civil rights attorney where I represented minorities in workplace discrimination and civil rights cases, represented women in Title IX cases where they were fighting for equal opportunity and funding and in athletic programs in our universities. I'm a passionate environmentalist. I spent 6 years as a senior attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council. Had a chance to work on a wide range of environmental issues, but in particular, issues relating to restoring salmon and fisheries. And that work brought me often into alliances with some of the Native American tribes on the North Coast. So these resource issues and this resource economy is something I'm very familiar with. And I'm running a campaign to represent the entire district. I am proud that something very unusual is happening in my race. You don't often see the business community and organized labor and the environmental community come together around one candidate, but that has happened in my race. I'm endorsed by the North Bay Labor Council and the California Labor Federation, also by the North Bay Leadership Council, the organization of the largest employers in the North Bay, by the California Small Business Association, and by all of the leading environmental organizations who have endorsed in this race. I'm running on a record of legislative accomplishment. We're going to need somebody in Washington who can get things done. And Sacramento is every bit as dysfunctional and partisan and broken as Washington. I've been able to overcome a lot of that, pass over 60 pieces of legislation in the last 5.5 years. I feel like I'm ready to step up to this major challenge of representing this district in Congress, and I would be honored to have your support. Thanks.
9 seconds left.
Stacy.
Okay, Stacy Lawson's next.
Thank you to NAMI and to Indian Health Services for allowing us to be here, and thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. My name is Stacy Lawson, and I'm running to be your next Congresswoman. And our campaign is about fighting for working and middle-class families. It's about getting our economy going again, making sure we have the kinds of high-wage, middle-class jobs here in Sonoma County and up and down this district that can help put our kids through college, that can make sure we can buy homes, that can help us retire in security. And I've been working in economic development for over 20 years. And I know what it means to have jobs that matter, because I actually grew up in a very small town, a rural town up in Washington State, very much like many of the towns that dot our north coast in this district. And my grandpa was a 30-year mill worker, my dad was a truck driver, and we started out very modest. We lived in a trailer in the woods. And through the power of the social contract of America, things like Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare and unemployment benefits, that contract really mattered to the folks in our community, and it's worth fighting for. And along with that, we needed economic opportunity. We needed jobs. And my dad built a small business that allowed us to move from that trailer into a little house and then a little bit bigger house. And that understanding that we need both the strength of those strong progressive values in our social contract along with economic development is actually what led me into my career. I built my first company when I was 25. I grew that in the manufacturing space, which I've been in for 15 years. And then co-founded the Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology at UC Berkeley, where I get to teach our bright young minds how they can take their ideas and make a difference in the world, that their ideas really matter. And so we've helped over 18 young companies be birthed out of that environment, all with young people at the helm. And that's why we put together our plan called Making More in America. And I would encourage you all to download this from our website, stacylawson.com, as it talks about how do we create a small business landscape where families can thrive, we can create the jobs we need, and we can make the economy here in the North Coast District a thriving economy again. Thank you very much.
Next we have John Llewellyn.
Good evening, I'm John Llewellyn. It's a great honor to be here on this historic occasion. I'm a seaweed harvester, small businessman from Mendocino County, and I love all of the tribes in Northern California and throughout California. There are many sovereign nations here, and I'm committed to defending and enhancing the cultural restoration and growth of these tribes. I remember about 30 years ago when I went to Kashaya into the roundhouse and I saw Lauren Smith dancing. I thought, this is still alive. This is the culture that's going to keep us alive for 1,000 years. And I'm in this campaign trying to rescue my civilization, if you want to call it that, from war, depression, and catastrophe. I'm a fundamental reformer. I'm an independent. I want to see if I can stop this imperialistic military policy. And if I can't, I definitely want to defend the rights of tribal people to harvest seaweed and fish and shellfish from the coast. I've been fighting for years against this mob, the Marine Life Protection Act initiative, that's been trying to shut down tribes and us from the fishing and gathering on the coast. And if you send me to Washington, you'll have someone who actually loves all of the tribal people of Mendocino County, is determined to defend the sovereignty of the tribal nations. And I want to thank you for maintaining your integrity of being sovereign and maintaining the cultures. And I'm going to do my best to make the environment in the Eel River so that people will not suffer the cultural genocide of having their basic food taken away. Thank you.
Susan Adams is next.
Thank you for sharing an evening with us tonight. I call us the Traveling Family Circus because we've been running up and down the coast for the last several months, but for many of you, this is the first time that you get a chance to meet us. And the question was, who are we and what do we bring? And for 33 years, I've been a nurse. I'm a women's health nurse practitioner. My doctoral work was with women who are dealing with addiction and recovery issues during pregnancy and motherhood. I've brought babies into the world, and I've been with families when they've been helping a family member leave the world and transition. And when you are a nurse, and when you're a healer, and when you're working in community from that perspective, that's the lens that guides you in all of your other policy. I've also been a county supervisor in Marin County for the last 10 years. And I've been bringing the healthy planet, healthy communities, healthy family approach to all of my policies, because you can't have one component and the other one not be working. It all has to work together in synchrony. Clean water, clean air, family health. And the issues that I've worked on in the county have included the launching of the Marin Clean Energy Program, which is demonstrating how we can remove ourselves from the fossil fuel dependence, create clean energy jobs, and help us to go into a future that doesn't pollute our planet and that gives us healthier air. I established a mentally ill offenders program that is emptying our jails of mentally ill offenders by putting them in treatment. We're one of the few counties in the state that actually has empty jail beds. We're working on family health programs, and we launched a family multi-care health service that provides comprehensive health care, accessing funding from the feds. So I know how to work with the regulatory agencies in Washington. I know how to set policy, and I have the local government lens, which understands when state and federal government are making laws and rules that prevent us at the local level from delivering those goods. So thank you for allowing me the chance to introduce myself tonight.
And Andy Capri is up next.
Good evening, folks. It's my honor and pleasure to be here with you tonight, and I appreciate being a guest of the Pomo, the Miwok, and the Wapo. I come from the land of the Gabrielino, down in the Los Angeles area. Now I live up on Pomo land as well, on the South Fork of the Elk River. I have worked a lot with Native people. I'll tell you about that later, but I think I need to tell you who I am first. When I grew up in Los Angeles, I was born the year after the worst smog ever. That was '56. I was born in '57. And I was born, I looked out the window, saw the smog, and coughed. I became a big fan of Jacques Cousteau, and I loved the ocean. And in high school, I got involved in a special inshore marine biology program when I was a junior, became a TA when I was a senior. I got a nomination to the Naval Academy in Annapolis when I was post-senior. But because they cut out their biology department, my dreams of using that career to become a marine biologist were over. So I resigned and went to UC San Diego, where I worked with a lot of people at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and realized there that being a scientist wasn't what was needed. We already had a lot of science. What we needed to do was get policy changed. We needed to see our results in the world. We needed to see restoration of all of our natural systems and the species. So I started to learn about activism, and I spent my whole life working on many, many campaigns. I actually worked on over 1,000 campaigns and contributed to that many projects all over the world. I worked with the Penan, the last tribe of peoples in Indonesia. And up here I've worked with the Sinkyung to help save the Sinkyung, which is the first intertribal park. I've worked with the Apache to save the sacred Mount Graham, which is a sky island. And we work to save the Caddo Peak area for the Caddo Sacred Medicine Bag. So I'm very inspired to you, and I owe you a lot, and I think we can do a lot together coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates. And I think from what I read is that one of you will probably be our representative, I'm guessing, just reading stuff I'm reading, so I don't know. One of our sponsors really is a group called NAMI, National Association on Mental Illness, and so we've asked the Vice President, Doug Stevens, to come up and just say a little bit about them. He is a sponsor of us also. Doug, so you have 2 minutes also.
I get 2 minutes. Thank you all for coming. These things are always a blast. I represent the National Alliance on Mental Illness here in Sonoma County. We're a grassroots organization of over 1,100 affiliates across the country. We are deeply involved in what goes on in Sonoma County with folks with mental health challenges, and Sonoma County also gets itself involved at state and national level as well. We're one of the leading affiliates in the country, and we're very proud of that. We are related to the Native American nation through Molin. They help us with an annual educational symposium that's free to anybody who wants to come. And we also provide free services. All of our programs are free to a variety of people across the county here. We're very pleased with that. Thank you for having us.
And of course, ourselves, the GIP, that's the Sonoma County Indian Health Project. Been in the county for about 40 years, providing health care for 40 years. And there's about 8,000 people who we provide care to. About 6,000 are native, about 2,000 are non-native. So the federal government is our primary sponsor. We get about, actually just a third of our budget comes from the federal government. The rest we make out of Medicaid and insurance. So we kind of hustle to make our budget. So, but we're kind of federally driven, so we're kind of like a federally qualified health center, but we're not really. And that's one of the bone of contention that we have, that we're not an FQHC. The FQHCs get a lot of benefits that we don't get. And so we provide care, though, to natives, and it's comprehensive care. We have 170 staff. I've been here for 14 years. When I came, we had a $4 million budget. Now we have a $17 million budget. We had 80 staff then, now we have 160 staff. And so we're a community clinic designated by the county, or we're AAAC, so we're a qualified clinic. All our providers are very good bona fide, board certified physicians and dentists. And so we have a mental health program also that's very prominent. One of our big problems here in our native community is diabetes. So we have we're the cutting edge of diabetes. Diabetes is preventable. It's very dominant here in our community. I myself am a diabetic. Many of our people have diabetes. So learning to live with and trying to prevent diabetes is one of the big successes, I think, that we're coming up with in our community. And so I would like to have REBA, that's Terry, come up and talk about the Redwood Empire Business Association just for a second.
Thank you, Molin. Once again, we wouldn't be here without Molin's hard work and perseverance in this, and we want to thank Molin immensely for that. I am under some medication, so I'm not going to try to talk too much longer. Mark Bramford is going to come up and talk, take my place here. A little intro into who the Redwood Empire Business Association is. We are 17 years old. We started out as a South and West Area Business Association to bring Roseland into the current century, last century. And we're almost there now. We have striven to put together community parks, to put together the Roseland Village Shopping Center, the underground with electricity up and down, all the services that PG&E provide. And we're proud to say that we are now about ready to ask the Board of Supervisors to inaugurate the plaza, 1 acre plaza on Sebastopol Road, after my good friend Cesar Chavez, who passed and was here in Santa Rosa 3 weeks before he died. The last place in California he was ever at was at the Roseland Elementary School. And so he asked us then to get a center built for his people, all people, as fast as we can. And that was 17 years ago. So because of a lot of reasons that I won't go into now, we haven't been able to do so, but we are now getting ready to do so. We are pleased to announce that the 1 acre parcel in on Sebastopol Road will be named after Cesar Chavez, and all the Board of Supervisors got to do is ratify that now. So that we decided that it should be, because Cesar asked for us to do that then. So we have some members here of the Cesar Chavez Memorial Committee. We have Juan de la O, who is the chair. He's also filming, co-chair, and with him is Mark Bramford, who you're going to meet in a moment. He's also co-chair of the in the first district of the Cesar Chavez Memorial Committee to get a national holiday in his name. And we're proud to say that we're also going to have a little something to do with a movie that's coming out on Cesar Chavez's life. It's being filmed right now as we speak, and you'll hear about Santa Rosa there. So. The Redwood Empire Business Association is open to membership to all. We are a business group, but we work with government and business to create harmonious, sustainable, profitable communities. So that is us. And now you're going to be hearing the rest of this between Molin, the candidates, and Mark Bramford. Thank you.
My friend here is from Ukiah, from the consolidated program is Freddie Branda. And so Freddie uses a term all the time, as we speak. That's what Terry spoke, and so I just thought of you, Freddie. He says, as we speak, this is happening.
Carry on.
Carry on. Somebody took my stuff there, though. Terry took my stuff.
Oh, isn't there, Mark?
This is the small version. I need the bigger version.
Oh.
Your medication, I think, is
you just said last week it was another reason.
or does Doug need to give you some help from Manami? Okay, folks, we have a series of 4 questions. So you just sit where you are. We have a handheld mic, and you can pass it along. We'll just go down the line. And so I'll ask the first question, and we'll just go right. So maybe we can just maybe that might turn off like that. So the first question is on health. You know, likelihood that the Supreme Court will knock out the Affordable Care Act and all those good aspects of it for health. We're concerned about that. And so we wanting to know what kind of support are you willing to do that? You know, you're going to be our representative. One of you will be our representative in Congress. And this goes to both. It'll probably go back to you guys and say, what are you willing to support for the court vote? There's a lot of good aspects of the Affordability Court Act, ACA, and actually known as ACA. Sometimes we mistake it as CACA, but it's ACA. So there's some good points to that part, and so we're wondering, what are you willing to work with us? And there's a thing that was passed in that called the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act. That was a kind of a rider to that. That passed originally in 1976, and was gone for like 12 years. So we tried for years to get that thing passed, and finally got it into this ACA, and now it looks like it may be just thrown out. It's very beneficial to us, so we're really concerned about what happens to that. Hopefully the Supreme Court will say that is divisible. So first question, I think you have it all before you, so Mr. Solomon, 2 minutes.
Well, as we speak, did I say that right? We see that hard-fought gains are under threat. Certainly that's true under healthcare being before the Supreme Court. I think it's so important for us to have a dedication and commitment to consolidate and advance the gains for poor people, for underserved communities. Whatever is done by the Supreme Court, we need representation in Congress that's going to fight for low-income people, for underserved people, for those whose interests are not served by Wall Street. And I am a 99%er. I think we need to occupy the seat for those who are locked out, whose interests are not being served. I'm co-chair of the National Healthcare Not Warfare campaign, which has been fighting for guaranteed single-payer health care for all. I think it's clear that whatever may be tossed out by this health care reform litigation and so forth. We've got to defend and make sure that all the positive things from this bill are retained. All the positives in this law are retained and extended in many cases. And that certainly includes the rider, the newly reenacted measure that you just referred to, because in effect, we have the gains in the last year or two, urban Indian healthcare programs, scholarships, funding for Indian healthcare that are under threat by joining it with the individual mandate. So to sort of sum up, I think that we will not have a stronger advocate for Native American health or for human rights in Congress than what I can provide. John Conyers, the sponsor of single-payer health care, has endorsed me. Raul Grajal, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Let me just close by saying, thinking about Cesar Chavez, I'm just proud to say that my candidacy in this race has been endorsed by Dolores Huerta, who today, we learned, has been awarded the Presidential Medal of Honor.
Tiffany, you know the question.
Thank you. I'm going to stand so hopefully you can see me. Glad I'm not in front of the podium. I have been really interested in seeing the Medicare for All come forward, and so whether or not this is struck down, we need to continue to work on bringing forward single-payer health care. As a local government official, we have continued to see healthcare costs rise in our budgets, and it's affected the services that we're able to provide to the community. We've continued to see decreases in our budget, and I have been proposing other ways to make up for that in local government. But at the national level, if we can apply Medicare for All to all public employees, that money that we're currently having to pay for medical services can go back into the communities. I have been up and down this district, and the people that I'm meeting with are people that are providing public services, because that's what I'm very interested in as wanting to represent you in DC in meeting the needs of this new district. And so one of the things that I've heard and that I'm concerned about are the services for the Native tribes and for the community, that the monies aren't necessarily flowing. And so one of the things that I would like to see are audits that happen to ensure that the funding that is supposed to go to your services does go to your services and doesn't get split off and put into other services within the counties. Because I know that is an issue in many areas in this district. So I think that's something that has to be addressed as well. As someone that has had a member of their family who's been homeless in the last year, having the ability to have insurance for your children has been an important factor, and I think that that's something that we've got to protect no matter what. So I look forward to serving you in Congress and making sure that we meet the needs of this new district. Thank you.
See, one of our chairmen did show up. So that's the Honorable Scott Cabalden, who's from the Mishawabwa tribe. Welcome, Scott. So next to our question on the health question would be Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Well, my first hope is that the Supreme Court upholds the Affordable Care Act. I still think that we've at least got a chance of that happening. If it doesn't happen, I know that there are several severability provisions built into this statute throughout, intended to insulate individual parts of it from the possible overturning of other individual parts. And I feel fairly confident that the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act element of the Affordable Care Act should stand alone. It should be upheld. It should not get taken down with the individual mandate and potentially other parts. But I do want to be very clear that if for some reason it is, that it does go away, you have my absolute commitment to getting to work on reintroducing it and codifying. I understand this is a really big deal. This statute gives tribes the status and the authority that they need to administer any number of programs, to sit at the table with federal agencies and with insurance companies and make sure that they're getting fair reimbursement rates. This is really important to the frontline healthcare delivery for tribes throughout this country. and you have my absolute commitment to fighting for it if we need to reintroduce that. I'll just mention one last thing on broader healthcare issues. You're going to hear uniform support for single-payer healthcare on this panel of candidates. I, too, support single-payer healthcare. I have co-authored it each and every year that I've been a state legislator. And as we defend the Affordable Care Act and the incremental improvements that we've won in recent years, I want to make sure you have my clear commitment that I will continue to push for that long-term goal, the goal that we have to have in this country for national universal health insurance.
Stacy has the next health question also. Stacy.
Thank you, John. Now, great. Well, let me start by saying that as the granddaughter of a nurse and the daughter of a public health worker for the state of California, I'm a strong advocate and have always been a fighter for high-quality, affordable health care for everyone. And that makes me, yes, also an advocate for single payer. I think that the Affordable Care Act has been a much-needed step towards fairness and broader availability of coverage, but it's only a first step. So what we managed to do, and hopefully independent of whether the individual mandate stands, we'll still see provisions like 32 million more Americans covered, things like the most egregious abuses by the insurance companies, things like pre-existing conditions being addressed in the Act, and also making sure that citizens like our young people can stay on their parents' insurance for longer. I think those things are very, very important, and if indeed we see that the individual mandate is struck down, that we need to redouble our efforts to make sure that those important provisions that are outside of the mandate stand, and that we're making sure that more Americans are covered and moving towards a single-payer model where everyone has universal health care. I absolutely support the Indian Health Care Improvement Act, and I think that it's a really important part of the Act in the sense that it addresses the key issues that are relevant to the Indian American population that are unique. Things like making sure that the availability of qualified healthcare professionals is addressed and available on Indian lands, making sure that key chronic conditions that Indian Americans face are addressed, and those quality services are provided. So just know in me you'll be you'll have a strong advocate for someone who is providing high quality, affordable care to all of our citizens in a way that we can afford, in a way that can move our healthcare system forward and takes care of the Indian American population as well as all others. Thank you.
Mr. Llewellyn.
Yes, as a person who's been living with the tribes and the seaweed for many decades, we're talking about health. Let's look forward 1,000 years. Let's look forward 1,000 years. What we need for health is cultural restoration, so that the cultures that have carried for so many thousands of years can live. And as this society, it may come and go pretty fast. It may come and go like a shimmering on the water. And we need the restoration of the Eel River, the Klamath River. We need to stop the peripheral canal. We need to keep all of these cultures alive and get back to the old foods. It's getting into the foods that we're eating that's getting people sick. Of course, I want the single-payer health care. The only way we'll get it is with a mass movement of people demanding it. Otherwise, we'll get what's been happening. The lobbyists kill it with billions of dollars, and then they raise our premiums. I don't know why they call it the Affordable Health Care Act. I'm not a member of this Democratic Party which gave us this. We have to keep trying for single-payer health care. And I'll work for every kind of help for the tribal people, and, including the health, and also to try to reform this justice system, which continues to be extremely discriminatory and harsh on tribal people. With me, you'll have someone who knows you, and whether you send me back here or there or not, it's my pleasure to tell you that I'm here to work with you as long as I live.
Susan Adams.
Well, it's nice to have family members that are participating in the healthcare system as providers, but I've actually delivered the goods in the trenches for 33 years as a healthcare provider. And I know what it takes to be able to provide comprehensive services. And I know the impact that state and federal laws and regulations and lack of funding have on our ability or inability to provide those services. I've been a single payer supporter for my whole nursing career. I lecture at it at the graduate schools at UCSF and at Dominican University on the health policy and the economics of it. Number one reason for bankruptcy in this country is because people get sick and they don't have access to health care. It's not just for Native Americans, it's for everyone, including our immigrant population as well. Having health care, I think, is a basic fundamental right. And if somebody that has insurance is sick, all their insurance in the world is not going to protect them from the contagious infection that an uninsured person who can't get access won't be able to spread that infection to them. So as a nurse, as a healthcare provider, as an educator, these are the waters I swim the best in. Native American healthcare issues are just as important as anybody else's healthcare issues, but we have to raise all of our boats together and decide that we don't want to just have single payer system Medicare for all for 65 and older. We want to make sure that we have Medicare for everybody, because when you invest in the upfront in prevention and early detection, then everybody stays healthier for longer. And it's been demonstrated in the Western European countries where they have these systems. People live 2 to 4 years longer, and we spend about 2 to 4 times more money for our healthcare system. The other piece is when all of these people are able to access healthcare, we need to have the providers who will provide that healthcare to them. And when you have systems closing down, like Humboldt State University's nursing school, we're moving in the wrong direction.
You know, all of us are in agreement on fighting for single payer. But you know, it's well and good to say that we support that, and we'll fight for everything less than that to be lifted up. But does anybody here think that the Republicans or Democrats in Congress are doing a good job? Well, does anybody think then that any of us can go in there and create miracles all by ourselves? I don't. I'm going in for a completely different reason, which we'll get into later tonight. But the biggest difference between me and these people is I'm not really competing with them. I'm competing with your mind. I want you to see that we are in a time of crisis and we have to deal with things in a different way. We have to change the foundation of our society. I've been working on the climate crisis for 30 years. We have to rebuild our infrastructure away from fossil fuels and nuclear as fast as possible. And to do that, we have to have unity and focus, and we have to take care of everybody. So my program is called New Green America, and it's about creating an expanded social safety net for everybody. You know, we divide everybody up into groups. You know, vets get better medical care than other people, and seniors get better than middle-aged people, and people who are disabled and whatever get better than lower middle-class people. We can choose to give everyone the single-payer health care if we, the people of America, decide to do that. We don't charge people for the police. We don't charge them for the troops overseas. We don't even have to pretend that we're paying attention. They'll just do it for us. Well, we can do that with schools. We can do that with college tuition. When I went to college at UC San Diego, my tuition was $215 a quarter. We can do this, and we have to do it. We have to start talking about it. And my campaign is about organizing us to do this before it's too late with the climate crisis. Because right now, half of Greenland's ice sheet is sitting on meltwater, like a slip and slide. If the whole thing goes, that's a 20-foot sea level increase, probably over a 20-year period. If 1 feet goes up, it wipes out Eureka. Then you really need health care. Thank you.
I was at UC Berkeley for $125, so I beat you.
Hi again, I'm Mark Brampett, filling in for the inestimable Terry Hilton, which is probably a harder thing to do than run for county supervisor. I've been asked to do 2 quick housekeeping items. First, I'd like to recognize Scott Gabalden, the tribal chairman of the Mishawal Wapo tribe of Alexander Valley. Scott, are you here? Thank you so much. The second thing is, for those of you who weren't able to attend tonight, tell your friends this event will be televised on all of the PBS stations from Eureka down to San Rafael, and it will be available on the internet within just a few days. So I have the business question of the evening to pose to the candidates, and just to mix things up, I know you've gone through 18 of these, so I know you can handle this. We're going to start with Jared and move down so that Norman, you don't get to be first every time tonight. Here's the question. In these economic times, and frankly, in all economic times, the business community often claims that regulations stifle economic vitality. Right now, it appears that there is an assembly bill in Sacramento that would put a freeze on regulations for business. Would you support a bill of that nature? Jared, you're up first.
Thank you. Well, that's a terrible bill, and I'm going to oppose it with every fiber of my being. Here's the truth. To say that all regulations stifle business is just false. A lot of regulations create markets. We have something in California here called the Renewable Portfolio Standard, to give you one example. We could talk about AB 32, our Greenhouse Gas Solutions Act, as another. These are regulatory frameworks that are driving a clean energy economy in California that's one of the bright spots right now in our economy. We're creating green jobs because of the regulations we've put in place that are creating markets and helping investment flow into this state to take advantage of these opportunities. I would also say that there's never a time when we should not be regulating very zealously to protect the public health. So I don't care what the economy is doing. If people are doing something in industry that is hurting people and killing people, we need to regulate that. I'm introducing a bill this year to ban a substance called coal tar, which is used occasionally as a pavement sealant. We don't need to do it. There are alternatives that are just as cheap and they're not carcinogenic. We need to ban that substance, and my bill is necessary as a regulatory answer to that situation. I'll just give you one other example of where a regulation can actually be quite good for the economy. We have some conflicts going on very close to here between our wine grape industry and our salmon populations, especially around the issue of frost protection in vineyards. Happens about this time of year. And I've introduced a bill that passed last year and is now the law. Right now, the State Water Board is implementing new regulations under that bill that will greatly streamline the construction of small off-stream storage projects so that frost protection activity can happen off of these streams, from these ponds, and that it eliminates the conflict between our wine grape industry and the salmon streams that we love and want to protect. So regulation can be a very, very good thing. If there's a bad regulation out there, I want to fix it. And I don't care what it is. Regulations can always be made to work better, but the idea that all regulations are bad for the economy and business is just wrong.
So I sometimes joke that every time we pass a new regulation, we should have to take, or a law, we should have to take 2 or 3 off the books just to keep it clean. But we, I think we need to continually look at our regulatory environment and make sure that we're not putting in place things that unduly burden either small business or individuals, because small business creates 85% of the jobs in this country, and we need to make sure there's a thriving small business landscape that can put our folks to work. That being said, I'm very wary of one-size-fits-all deregulation. And this bill is a very bad bill, I absolutely agree, because we've seen what happens in the name of deregulation that's not common sense. We saw the mortgage crisis collapse, we saw our banking system falter, and that kind of deregulation was very, very irresponsible and had serious impacts on what has now eroded our middle class. The fact that we're dealing with this massive mortgage crisis, which will be an overhang on our economy for a very long time until we get it fixed. And we still have a very fragile banking system that actually needs to be re-regulated in order to make sure that we don't have these boom-bust cycles. So we need to be smart, and the devil's in the details. We need our regulations to protect our air, our water, our land, our people. We need to make sure we're preserving our environment and stewarding it properly, that we have a sustainable path forward. And I would say that regulation is actually, in some cases, we say that necessity is the mother of invention. That by setting the right kinds of standards around things like emission standards, that we actually stimulate markets to go out and innovate. And that, for instance, in the area of clean energy and renewables, that can be the next wave of innovation that actually fuels our economy like nothing we've ever seen before. It will surpass the internet and the industrial revolution, that this is an area where we can actually be driving the economy forward by smart regulation. So I think we have to be clear that there is no one-size-fits-all. We need to bring more common sense and thoughtful approach to making sure our regulatory climate both it stimulates small business and doesn't overly burden it, so that we can have the kinds of jobs we need to take care of our working families and rebuild our middle class.
Yeah, hi, I'm John Llewellyn. Yeah, this freeze on regulation is a pretty mindless approach, it seems to me, you know, like just freeze them all and stop it. It's kind of typical of a lot of the mindless approaches we're getting these days. I think that, well, I'm really in this business I'm in here now, not only to meet you people and really work with the tribes as best I can, but also to try to achieve the fundamental reforms that we really need to avoid war, depression, and ecological catastrophe. That's where I think we're headed. I think we need a National Peace Conversion Act that will take and convert our economy from one that just produces weapons and war and imperialism and convert it to a job-producing economy that actually solves the human needs and converts us to wind and solar energy and getting away from these fossil fuels. If we just relax and kick back and lay back, there's going to be a whole bunch of fracking. They'll just tear up all of our underground water. They'll rip off all the forests of Canada and make tar sands, and we won't get much energy out of it. We need a whole lot of regulations. Now, on the small business side, I look at it differently, because I'm living with a bunch of family farmers who are regulated by the USDA so that they can't grow a sheep and sell the meat to somebody, or they can't have a goat dairy or even a vegetable farm because of these USDA regulations that come in and close these guys down. I'm looking at a fishing industry where all of the fisheries allocations have gone to the big trawlers and away from the small fishermen. There we need some, relaxation of regulation. But we've got to think about it and work together for the right regulations.
So I think what's a better question is, how do we achieve regulatory reform and coordination with the multiple regulatory agencies from regional, state, and federal government that sometimes can prolong processes? And I've just come off of the experience of having worked very closely with Lucas and trying to get a studio built in Marin County. And a number of different regulatory agencies were prolonging the process, and then a couple of neighbors next door decided they wanted to take it to the courts. And Mr. Lucas decided not only does he not want to deal with all the regulatory agencies, but he also didn't want to be in courts for the next 2 years fighting somebody who was fighting him regarding regulations. So I think what the problem is that we need to make sure that we're streamlining the processes so that we're not undermining the good work that happened from, like, the Clean Water Act. There were rivers on fire from toxic dumping in the rivers back in the 70s. The Clean Water Act helped us straighten that out. People weren't breathing clean air. So this is regulation. I think you're hearing all of us say that regulations are important, but I think there needs to be some work in how do we make sure that they're helping to support those that are really working on helping develop our economy, and the ones that want to poison our rivers and pollute our airs, we're still having the tools in place to be able to deal with that. In Marin County, we launched the Marin Energy Authority. And it wasn't the regulatory agencies that held us up, it was PG&E, the corporation, that didn't want us to launch that. And we've been in battle with the corporation. So it goes the other way as well. We need to find ways to be able to allow local communities to be able to move forward on those programs that they want to do. And your next congressional leader is going to be the one that's going to work with you to figure out how to make those dreams a realization.
Did you know that 41 Republican senators meet the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder? That's a kind of psychopathy. We have to get real about how these regulations are made. These regulations are made by the corporations and the rich and their stooges to make the environmentalists think they're getting something, but to give all of the advantages to the big corporations and to screw the sole proprietors and small businesses. And they get the small proprietors and the small businesses, and where I live, the loggers, to hate the environmentalists, and we go through decades of battling, and then the entire Redwood forest ecosystem is trashed. I'd like to say I agree with everything that John Llewellyn has said tonight, and most likely with everything he will say. John's a great man. One of the advantages that John and I have is that we actually live in the rural parts of the district. Most of these other candidates I consider Highway 101 tourist candidates. They wanted to run to their credit when the district was different, when it was Marin County, and they're very qualified. These are all terrific people. I know every single one of them cares about you and will do their best. The difference is, how much do we think we can change things? For me, I start with our plight. The ecological crisis. Well, let me ask you, anybody here freaked out about the climate crisis, the ecological meltdown, the collapse of our economy, or the Republican destruction of our democracy and our infrastructure? That's where we have to start. Because in 1990, the Woods Hole Research Institute, the EPA, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued reports that said we have to reduce our fossil fuel emissions 50 to 80% below 1990 levels by 2005. The science since then shows we have to do even more, but we don't get any more time. So I'm saying we have to have a war effort to convert. President Obama has to declare a national climate emergency, and we have to focus the country like we did in World War II. We can do this. We have to turn on our own light in our communities and start to come together. It's not about blaming people. It's about coming together, making things whole, and doing what has to be done and not giving up.
Clearly, we've got to have business regulation. The question is, what kind of regulation serving who? And the regulation has to serve the public interest and has to serve small businesses, not be dictated by and rewritten by Wall Street. And unfortunately, that's what's happened. We've gotten outcries about, oh, there's too much regulatory red tape. And rather than cut through the red tape and help small businesses in the public interest, so-called reform quite often is scripted by, implemented for Wall Street. And that's why I think it's a fundamental question of the person you elect to Congress, is he or she beholden to big corporate interests? Are we going to fight for the small local businesses? Are we going to fight against those interests that, for instance, like BP did this atrocious assault on the well-being of the Gulf of Mexico? Are we willing to say we will allow zero, as I am saying, zero offshore oil drilling? We absolutely must stop this threat to the earth. And it's impossible, I believe, to really fight for Mother Earth, to fight for the ecosystem, if you're beholden to Wall Street. You can't be deep green if you aren't willing to sever yourself from big corporate funding. It's a reason why I'm very proud that although our campaign has raised more than $500,000, we haven't taken any corporate PAC money, we haven't taken any lobbyist money, and we've taken money from individuals with our average donation $94, whereas a couple other major fundraising candidates here, it's $350, $450. That matters because when you go to Washington and you have a healthy ecology of funding, it means you're not beholden to those big concentrations of economic and political power. We've got to have a regulatory framework that serves the earth, that serves the public interest, not a regulatory framework that throws up a bunch of red tape for the small businesses and allows Wall Street to make out like bandits. That's wrong, and we've got to oppose it.
Thank you. Well, I've been working on the mortgage crisis for many, many months now, as it's had a huge impact in our community, and this is due in part to lack of regulatory interests, and we have to return to the rule of law if we're going to be able to recover economically. So one of the things that I've been working on in local government is our economic development strategy. We set out a few years ago to work directly with our small businesses on the issues that were most important to them, on the challenges that they were facing, and we came up with a plan, we put it into place, and we hired an economic development development director that serves as an intermediary between our departments so that when people get stuck, they have someone that's an advocate for them, for the small business person, for the sole proprietor. It's a Main Street solution to Wall Street's corporate influence. And we certainly have seen that both in local politics and in national politics, and it's why I have chosen last fall to run a very right-sized campaign, not taking that corporate influence in individual donations, as many of the candidates up here have, but really focusing on doing the work with people, representing the people, and not being influenced by this corporate money. And that's what we need in Washington, that's what's broken, and that's what I intend to change when I get there. We need to have public financing so that all people can be represented and not the interests that have taken over DC. So, you know, we're seeing really great successes. We've been able to retain businesses that said they were going to leave because they were hitting up walls and didn't have someone serving them. And it's working, and it's something that we need to continue to do throughout the country. This bill that's being proposed is, I think, not the right solution. It would take a lot of money to do this, and it's something that communities don't have. It's something we were able to invest in because we had redevelopment money, which is now gone, thanks to Sacramento. So the more that we can focus on serving those local communities and local businesses, the better off we're going to be.
Okay, our next question is kind of one on Indians, but it's more like everywhere I go, it seems like I have to explain myself, explain about Indians. They seem like no concept, and so whenever we engage in kind of argument, we have to give everyone the kind of the 101. What are Indians and what are they? What is this thing on tribal sovereignty? It's the biggest stumbling block that we have. So next question, I think we'll start, since you started changing, we'll start with Stacy. So kind of what is your understanding of kind of the tribal sovereignty that Indians have, and what is your appreciation or feeling toward that, about that?
So I very much support tribal sovereignty and the government-to-government relationship that our tribal peoples have with the U.S. federal government. I think it's very essential that we have the deep care, love, respect, and honor for all people in our society. And the Indian peoples, given the long history of conflict and oppression and violence, that there is a sort of due to be paid to reconcile that history. And that part of that is a direct government-to-government relationship between the sovereign nations, the sovereign tribal peoples, and the U.S. government, and making sure that we're upholding broadly the compact, if you will, of that mutual respect. Things like universal health care, mental health services, thriving economy, opportunity for all, and really incorporating that into a deep commitment to serving you and to serving all people. So I would say that would be my understanding, and it's based on a mutual sense of love, respect, care, and dignity for everyone, that we're all connected and we need to care for all. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I'm John Llewellyn, and I'm lucky because I was able to go with Martine McGee at Pinoleville to a conference on tribal sovereignty in Reno. And we had a grand old time, and it was, I was the only person there who wasn't a tribal person. And I'm totally amazed that there are so many nations. There are 8 sovereign nations in Mendocino County. I like to tell people that these are people who have never surrendered to the United States government. These are, sovereignty is control over one's own destiny and one's own being. And I've learned a lot from not only about tribal sovereignty, but about the feeling of personal sovereignty from tribal people. And I want to defend this with every breath that I have. No empire has ever been strong north of Santa Rosa. And I really want to support and build up these sovereign nations and the cultures that underlie them and the natural resources, the rivers and the ocean. We have to keep it clean and accessible. And I'm committed to defending these sovereignties with every breath that I have.
Thank you. I support and appreciate tribal sovereignty. And I think together, intergovernmental relationships, we can actually solve a lot of community issues that we share in common. I think that, I know that there are more per capita tribes in this district than probably anywhere else in California, and I think it's going to be important for your next congressional leader to actually have a tribal person on their congressional staff here in the district, so that people don't have to get on a plane and fly to Washington to try to make their case, and have somebody that actually understands tribal issues be able to work with your congressional leader, and I would make that promise. I've had some really important and wonderful conversations with some of the tribes further north about economic development. It's not just about the provision of healthcare and housing with tribes, it's also about some of the social issues, domestic violence, some of the issues that the tribes are facing, and some tribes have more funding than others. So how do we make sure that all boats float well together? That's going to be a really important challenge, but economic development doesn't just have to be about casinos. It can also be about the new clean green economy, development of green energy, development of an economic future that's healthy and sustainable and provides living wage jobs that are able to help families feed their families and be able to attain what the community or the tribe would like for their community. So I promise you that if I'm elected, you will have representation on my staff to address tribal issues. It's an important issue, and I think it's important for us to be able to establish relationships where we can solve problems together, because community actually, on this little blue marble that's floating around in the universe, we all share the same air, the same water, and the same sense of wanting to have what's right for our families.
Andy?
You know, when I've been wronged severely by some of these psychopaths among us, I've learned that a little bit of my spirit was taken away. And I have found that you can't really forgive people until they give you your spirit back. When I look at the history of Native Americans in this country and the betrayal by the United States government year after year after year, it makes me think that tribal sovereignty is only respected as long as the coal companies are part of the project. The United States government will just make you think it, and then they'll take it away when they need it from you, just like eminent domain. I believe that the system imposed on the tribal system around this country needs to be radically reformed. This tribal council system, we all watched what happened with the Hopi and the Navajo. They used it to divide the so-called progressives who want development from the traditionals and the radicals. And then they have at it, just like we're divided up there, the loggers and the environmentalists. I believe every tribe should be able to define its own representation in its negotiations with the United States. If it's all elder women, fine. But it has to come out of the tribe's culture itself. Only when the culture of the tribes can be respected by this country and not trounced will there really be sovereignty for tribes on this land.
I began this evening by talking about the importance of history, and if we look at where we are today, if we don't put it in a historical perspective, then we think, well, no, maybe this isn't so important. In fact, so many people have struggled and died so that today we can have, and we've got to have, a strong nation-to-nation relationship between Native American peoples and the U.S. government. And when we understand the necessity of that, we can look at what is possible to achieve. So that, I think, is crucial to a beginning point in terms of tribal sovereignty. At this stage, we have the continuation of so many dynamics of poverty, pollution, equivalent of what used to be called national sacrifice areas, the way in which Native peoples are still being subjected to racism. And to me, I don't have to sort of figure, oh, this is something what position do I take on this? To me, it comes natural that to support human rights means to recognize that history is not just in the past, it's also in the present. That means that a nation-to-nation relationship requires that we recognize human rights in all forms. Not just say, oh, and there was a question, I don't know if it was verbally asked, but it talked about deserving of certain exemptions, and I wouldn't use those terms. It's not that Native Americans are asking for exemptions. It's what is the right on the basis of history in terms of the nation-to-nation relationship. So in terms of where we can go in the future, I think that we've got to examine ways in which the tilt is so much still against Native Americans, that healthcare, education, housing, ecological protection, these are absolute injustices that in many respects continue today. And so I would like to go to Washington to speak for human rights, to fight for human rights in solidarity with Native Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. When I was first elected to Petaluma City Council, we were asked to oppose a local casino. And I was part of that opposition because the environmentalists had said this was a terrible idea, and my constituents had asked me to do this. And as I became more and more aware of what was happening throughout the county and now throughout the district, I became less and less in opposition, and actually was very encouraged with the process. And I saw that process occurring as a way of that tribe emerging and really claiming its tribal sovereignty. And the county, I think, in recognition of that, trying to come ahead and recognize that as well. And it's been a really exciting process to see that. As I've watched that process go, I've heard things and I've seen things that have really angered me. And we actually were asked to send another letter in opposition on the recent compact that's coming forward. And I spoke to my council that night, and I said, I think this is really the wrong approach. We're not recognizing the tribal sovereignty that exists and looking at it in terms of working with that tribe around the issues that we have concerns about and the impacts that may happen with our community. And that's what we're lacking. We're lacking it here within our own communities, and we're lacking it in Washington, D.C. And we need people that will stand up and have those difficult conversations, recognizing one another face to face with respect and dignity, and that's what we need. And it's something that I was able to do with my council and was proud to do that. It made me, I had to vote for it even though I didn't want to because I didn't understand how you could abstain or not. But I did sign the letter, and I've spoken on behalf of that issue with my Asseblymember as well. So I look forward to representing these issues in DC and really cutting to the quick about the things that people are unwilling to discuss and being a strong leader in that respect. And so I stand with you. Thank you.
I understand and support sovereignty as a matter of law, as a matter of respect, as a matter of justice. I, as a state assembly member, have probably worked more on these issues than other candidates because the state does have government-to-government relations with tribes. Many of our policies do come into play, not just on Indian gaming, but that certainly is one area, but we have other government-to-government policy interactions. And I do have a voting record on this that is very strong in terms of respecting tribes and sovereignty. The California Tribal Business Alliance, in fact, has a legislative scorecard and a ranking, and I've been 100% under that scorecard. So I've got a lot to learn, and I want to tell you, even though I think I've worked on this probably more than the other candidates, there's a lot to understand here. This is complicated. This goes back a couple hundred years, and it involves treaties and Supreme Court rulings and policies, and I am going to bring a fair measure of humility in listening to these issues as well, and I will ask you, if I'm your member of Congress, to help educate me about the complexities and about these issues as we go forward, and I will promise to always treat you with great respect. In addition to my voting record on this, I can tell you about one specific area where I was able to work with the tribe to try to regain their federal recognition, which is so critical to them having the benefits of sovereignty. The Winnemem-Wintu tribe used to exist, but they became very inconvenient to the federal government in the 1930s because the federal government wanted to build Shasta Dam and flood out their ancestral lands, and so the federal government simply stopped recognizing them. And we know that this has played out and happened many, many times throughout the West, throughout our country. I authored a resolution that did pass, calling on the federal government to recognize the Winnemem-Wintu people so that they could begin to get some justice for a terrible injustice that was done to them, and also so that we can fight against the federal government that now wants to raise Shasta Dam again and flood out the rest of the Winnemem-Wintu's religious grounds. So I appreciate the chance that I have had a chance to work on these issues. I do have a good record, and you will find me a strong supporter and very respectful of sovereignty in Congress.
We're ready to power through our last question of the evening. If you need caffeine and sugar, you have Stephen Davis of Emerald Catering to thank for that. I'd also, on behalf of Terry Hilton, like to recognize Brad Simpkins, who's here with us this evening. Tsalagi and Brad have been members of REBA for 17 years and have been instrumental in that organization, so thank you, Brad. So our last question tonight is on mental health. I'm going to let Ms. Adams begin. We're shifting the order again. The last question of the evening is, are you committed to preserving the Mental Health Services Act to meet our county's mental health needs?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. I currently serve on the National Association of Counties on the Health Steering Committee, where over 3,000 counties are working together on a variety of issues about delivering services at the local level. The Mental Services Act has been one of those, and too often many of the pieces of legislation that come forward talk about healthcare reform, but they eliminate mental health services, they eliminate dental services, and sometimes they even eliminate some of our children's services and prevention. And so this is the area that I swim the best in. As I said, my doctoral work was with women who are dealing with addiction, recovery, and dual diagnosis during pregnancy and motherhood. I had a clinical practice for many years dealing with this population, and I understand the complexity and how the federal and state governments separate pieces of people out into, you're addicted and then you go to this place, and then you have mental health problems, you go to this place, and then you have maybe HIV, you go somewhere else. We need to get out of that mode, kick down those silos, and start treating the whole person with comprehensive health care. And that's where we go back to a Medicare for all approach, which includes mental health, that everybody can have access, early prevention, early detection, and be able to take care of their needs. When we focus on prevention up front, we save so much money on the downstream. And it's not just going to the clinic, it's about having healthy food for our children, early preschool education, having our kids have opportunities that maybe they wouldn't have had because of their families come from lower income means. And these are the things that I've been working on my whole professional career. Bringing the healthy communities and healthy family approach is what I've done in my 10 years in policy and local government. And I understand the lens that is put on the state and federal government and how we're able to deliver or not deliver services based on rules and regulations that either help us or hinder us. So I'm going to be your strongest advocate in the healthcare reform agenda.
Thank you.
I have to confess something right now. I'm part of the 1%, the lowest 1%. One of the things I do besides the big climate rainforest issues is work with individuals in my community. We had a veterans hall that used to have an emergency homeless shelter in the winter, and they wouldn't do it one year. And so I used our community radio and some church ladies, and we had meetings at our Mateel Community Center with the homeless people, and we raised $1,000 from a pot grower. We rented a building and saved 3 people's lives, 2 of whom were American Vietnam veterans. I myself went through the Oakland firestorm and developed PTSD and was homeless for 5 years. I had no drug or alcohol problems, I just had PTSD. and ADD, and I have obsessive compulsive tendencies. So I understand mental health needs, and I also understand when the state, the Democrats in charge, write a budget that cuts out eyeglasses, dental care, mental health services. Now I want to clarify something. I've implied, Jared, and I apologize for that, implying that you are a murderer. What I say is, these people, I'm saying it harshly. What I'm saying though is that when these bureaucrats write these budgets, we become numbers. And I deal with those numbers on the street. You will never be numbers to me. I'm saying the paradigm of the Democrats in the state has the effect of committing murder on people. People die when they sign pens. Jared is a good man.
Mr. Solomon, your name.
As the lawyers say, I will stipulate to the goodness of all the candidates. You know, one of the big problems we have in policy and public discourse is to separate physical health from mental health. That's ridiculous. We know that we're one body, we're one entity, and mental and physical has so much intertwining that sometimes that's frankly a convenience of the insurance companies so that they don't provide the health care that we deserve. And when we start with the understanding that health care is a human right, then we don't splice and dice people up and say, well, when you have this kind of health issue, we will help you, and you have this kind of issue, we won't. The possibility of guaranteed health care for all is inherently to say that we're one being, we're one society, we're going to take care of everybody. I'm very proud to say that I've been endorsed by the sponsor of the main single-payer health care bill in Congress, John Conyers, the author of H.R. 676. And that bill brings together the understanding by law, if it can be signed into law, that mental health and physical health cannot be separated in any way. Let me say that one of the big elephants or donkeys in the room, when I look at it, in a lot of this discourse is poverty. And quite often, elected folks and people who end up sort of on soapbox about this won't acknowledge the profound negative impacts of poverty in our society, how widespread it is, and the effects it has not only on what we call physical health, but on mental health as well. And so people who have some means, who are able to buy a Cadillac healthcare coverage, for instance, when they have some difficulties in life, they don't get stigmatized, they don't get trashed, and they don't get set aside and put in some category, you're mentally ill or something, and you don't have the capacity to, or the deservingness, if you will, of being helped. The reality is, whether you're a veteran or anybody else in society, quite often, if you don't have money, if you're in the lower middle income, poor areas, or, and to close on this note, what the New York Times now calls the near poor, which is a lot of us, then we are being treated unfairly, and we've got to, in our society, affirm and take care of the human rights of all for health care, and that includes mental health.
Thank you. This is a very deeply personal issue for my family. We had a family member who is mentally ill, and my grandparents actually had to make him a ward of the state because of the costs that were associated with caring for him. And California has a tragic history, actually, of not supporting our mentally ill. And so families have had to struggle with these issues for decades. And the Affordable Care Act has really been able to bridge some of those gaps that will make it possible for family members to care for their dependents in this way. There are issues around ensuring that these exchanges continue to meet those needs, as insurance companies may not have some of those abilities included in their plans. And so we need to really make sure that those issues are covered. My father was a veteran of the Vietnam War. My brother is a veteran of the Second Iraq War. Both of them struggle with PTSD, and so those kinds of issues also are very deeply personal, and we need to continue to make sure that our veterans have medical and mental health coverage as well, so that they can recover from the challenges that they've faced and go on to continue to be productive members of society. Mental health costs are excruciatingly expensive and painful for families to deal with, and so being able to continue to have that coverage in the Affordable Care Act is essential, and something that I will work very hard because it is deeply personal for me. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, Andy, I think you're a good guy too. This is a pretty short answer. The answer is yes, I will absolutely defend that policy if I am your next member of Congress. I will go further. I actually have a record of going further. For the last several years, each year, I've been able to vote in favor of legislation to require mental health parity in health plans. Health plans must be required to cover mental health services, and I know that NAMI has been a big supporter of the legislation by Asseblymember Bell. He continues to be a real champion for that. So I have a record, I have a commitment, and you can count on me in that regard. Since that's such a short answer, I perhaps will use my remaining time to tell you about one other example where I've had a chance to work with a Native American tribe on some pretty critical issues. And that involves our fisheries. And involves a practice called suction dredge mining, which is something that some hobbyist miners like to do on rivers like the Trinity and other rivers that are tributary to the Klamath system. And it just does enormous damage to our salmon populations and to our steelhead trout. I've been able to work very closely the last several years with the Karuk tribe, with the Yurok tribe, and others to put in place at least a temporary ban on suction dredge mining so that we can protect those fisheries and of course the extreme significance that they have to our North Coast tribes. I'm committed this year to taking that temporary moratorium and taking it the next step into a permanent moratorium, and I'm working with the Karuk and the Yurok and others on that right now. So thanks for the question.
So the question is whether I'm committed to preserving this act, and the answer is absolutely yes. I believe it's vital to actually providing the kinds of funding and comprehensive services that we need to serve our mentally ill. That we have 5 to 9% of our population every year, of our adults, our children, our seniors, that struggle with mental illness, and that's 2 million Californians. And they deserve the same benefits, the same rights as any other disabled population or any other citizen. And that we need to be fighting for their services, that we know untreated mental illness leads to a whole host of other challenges like homelessness and violence and sometimes incarceration. But we also know that treated mental illness can lead to, with the right kind of support and the right kind of individualized treatment, can very much lead to feasible recovery. And that's what we need to be proponing and supporting for all of our citizens. And the focus of this act has been around individualized treatment and support. That's been a key to its success. And so you have my commitment to both support and uphold the act, but also to extend those successes and to extend the types of funding and support that we have for our mentally ill population. Thank you.
Yes, of course I support the Mental Health Services Act. I think there's a kind of madness in our whole society, however, that we really have to deal with. I was compelled to get into this. It's a very uncomfortable thing for me to do. I'm doing it without many financial resources. If you decide to send John Llewellyn back to Washington, it will be a decision that will shape world politics, because I'm operating on less than $10,000. I'm an independent, and I'm determined to try to stop this suicidal imperialism that's going to eat all of our resources, and it's poisoning so many of our young people. It used to be a good path for a person, anyone, a tribal person, to go into the military, but now it's such a toxic environment. The basic metal that they use now is not lead, but it's uranium, and it burns into uranium oxide, and our troops breathe it. They're spreading it throughout the world, If it gets inside of people, it causes cancers that develop over decades. I would try to stop this. And we won't accomplish any of these things unless we all work together. There has to be a mass movement for peace conversion and for a sensible healthcare system. What Susan Adams said is really true. It's a holistic thing. You can't separate mental health from the rest of health. We need the health of everything. And first, we need particularly the health of tribes and tribal communities and tribal culture. I believe that to the American society, a healthy tribal culture is so necessary to us that we should all become more educated about the tribes who are with us and the needs, and our needs to keep tribal cultures alive and flourishing.
Well, that's the other
I love this question, I thought the question was going to be, and this is the question I'll ask for you, because don't answer it, because that won't take too long. The question is, you know, most people have never been to a reservation and don't know the conditions or situations. I think some of you said that, unless you're there, you don't know. And so you will go to Congress, you will represent us. But having never been to a reservation, maybe some of you have, some of you haven't. I think his question is going to be, if not, my question is, are you willing to come, once you're elected, are you willing to come and stay in a reservation for a day or two, or maybe longer, to get some feeling, understanding what people live with, how they live and how they react at the reservation level, not at the level that you know, so you can be right there. So the question is, are you willing to come and spend a couple of days at a reservation? And you can just answer yes or no. Don't give us a long answer, just yes or no. So starting with Mr. Solomon.
Yes.
I've already asked for an invitation. I would go now, and yes.
Yes, I've already visited 3 reservations and 2 rancherias, and I will get to the rest, I promise you.
Absolutely, yes.
Longer if you'll have me.
Ditto.
Well, of course.
You don't listen, yes or no is the answer. So,
See, we can do it.
Molin, if I may.
no.
Listen, I'm going to take this, excuse me, Jared, and anyone who disagrees, but our business association has been standing behind the great casino since we met with Stations Casinos 8.5 years ago. We believe that what Graydon's going to do with that entertainment facility is going to just light up this area. I'm an entertainment and sports promoter. I did the World's Wrist Wrestling Championship on ABC's Wide World of Sports, the World Boxing Hall of Fame. I like showbiz stuff. My partner and I, Mondillo, just came back as members of the National Association of Latino Independent Producers and met with Rita Moreno and a whole bunch of my heroes that this casino will bring to us the entertainment like we've never seen before. Also sporting events. I personally am not a big fan, Tony, don't say, you can repeat this, of Greg Sarah's. I'm not a big fan, but I am of what they're proposing. So I hope that everyone here knows at the day, on the dais here, that the Business Association, 200 businesses strong in the Redwood Empire and growing, stand behind the great casino. I think it's the best thing that ever happened to Sonoma County.
Thank you.
Where is she? Did you go back and tell Greg that? So I'm very happy with the candidates that came tonight. I was really enlightened. I think I learned a lot. And I appreciate you here, and thank you very much for coming. Thank all of you.
le voy a hacer de estos. ¿De estos?